Sleepy, huh? What'd you do? Go to bed at 3 again? Hmm.
Hey Jack.
Yo,
Hey, just FYI, I got to bed probably around 5:45 a.m.
well, you
So
should go back to bed.
I'm likely to not be very coherent and I may fall asleep.
Look, you already sound incoherent.
Blah 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 wah 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 wah
Right on schedule.
wah. So anyway, I will try as best I can, and if nobody joins other than you and I for 10-15 minutes, we can then decide what to do.
Well, you need your sleep.
Thank you, sir. But I don't want to leave you in a lurch. And, some people might actually say interesting things when they're like not all there.
Oh, well. So the Powerball is now $1.1 billion dollars.
I have never, ever bought a lottery ticket myself.
I bought a few.
Not once in my life. Now, when you bought one, did you actually think there was some chance that you would actually win?
Well, you read stories about, Joe Schmeckelhausen bought a ticket at a gas station on Highway 79 out in Booneyville,
Mhm.
and he won $1 billion. And so I don't buy lottery tickets at the local supermarket. I go to local little gas stations on small roads.
And has that done better?
Well, it if you look at the headlines of the Powerball winners and the super whatever super lotto winners, they tend to be people who bought them at off the road places, not at the supermarkets. I tend to think it has something to do with the way the random number generator on the ticket gets scrambled.
But still the probabilities are they
Oh, they're
should.
low.
Yeah.
They're super low.
Mhm. Wouldn't the preponderance of all the winners still be in highly populated locations?
Not necessarily.
Isn't that what probability would suggest?
Well, it doesn't matter where they live. The it seems that the winning tickets were bought at let's just call them rural gas stations.
So did you buy a ticket for this one?
No.
Hmm. It's interesting that you mentioned lotto because a lot of what I've been learning is how to live in a probability world, a probability space
Well,
with
that's
the
how the world
investment.
works.
Well, not most of people think like that,
Yeah,
but in investment, if you don't think like that, you're dead.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
However, you should understand, let's go on that subject for a moment.
Mhm.
Um, Probabilities and the stock market don't quite go together. Here's why. The stock market is fundamentally an emotional, chaotic feedback loop. That means that it is in fact chaotic, that you cannot use today's ticker data to predict tomorrow's. What you can look for are what are called attractor basins, where the various events are starting to orbit an attractor. Now that's a tradable. And here's what I suggest you do is read the book um, The Predictors by let me look it up. Aha, The Predictors, How a Band of Maverick Physicists used chaos theory to trade their way to a fortune on Wall Street by Thomas Bass. He also wrote, previous to that one, about the same guys. He wrote a book called The Eudaimonic Pie, where they tried to bet on uh, they tried to use chaos theory to bet on the roulette wheel in Vegas. Those two books are completely awesome.
When were they written?
Well, Predictors was written 2000. I remember Adam Chirk gave me a copy of it. I had already read the Unibonic Pie, and Adam Chirk gave me it as a Christmas gift when I was working for him at uh, at Vertical Net.
Hmm. We'll take a look see.
Okay, it's on Amazon. Let me give you the page.
I've got the title now.
Well, I'll give you the page. It's 43% off for 13.79. Meeting Analytics wants me to tell it something. Fuck Meeting Analytics. So you also probably want to read the Eudaimonic Pie as well. What they did, they were grad students in physics at Santa Cruz when somebody came in with the Lorentz equations and put them on the analog computer, and they took a look at that and said, "Fuck physics, let's do this." Because the Lorentz equations are the ones about climate. They're chaotic attractors. And if you look at them, they look kind of like a figure eight, jagged figure eight. And they decided that the roulette wheel was a good thing to try. So they went out and bought a roulette wheel. And then they bought some very high-end shoes and had the soles hollowed out. And they put a transmitter in one and a receiver in the other. And then the transmitter and the receiver served as dual calculators as to what to place your bet on. And they sort of won and they sort of didn't. They ran into a lot of problems because they found out that the casinos in Vegas were electronic nightmares, and the receiver really couldn't hear the transmitter, even though they were standing next to each other. It's a very interesting story.
Had the casino found out, they would have been in serious trouble, I
Oh,
suspect.
the casino got suspicious and they had to take a run and leave the casino, and so they went to Reno. But the thing is that the receiver had a way of telling you what signal to read by poking at your big toe. And they said one time it went berserk and was puncturing holes in the guy's toe.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I don't see how a receiver could do anything useful.
Well, you have to read the book.
Yeah.
You have to understand chaos theory, and that's not what's being taught to you. You're being taught probabilistics. There are people who thought, oh, I'll just put a Fourier transform on the stock market. No, it's just not pure sine wave. Um, Secondly, uh, you can use probabilities, yes, but you got to collect a shitload of data. If you're going to do a Bayesian, go out on the web and look for Bayesian stock trading, and you'll find tons of papers and probably even some things at GitHub. But you have to collect all kinds of information. And Bayesian does not want the signals that you're collecting to be correlated. They have to be uncorrelated. So you can't collect the statistics on an index and then the statistics on the stocks that are in the index because they're
Mhm.
correlated. But you can go off and collect stuff like for example, consumer price index and M1 over M2 and blah blah blah. And there's all kinds of other things going on, the interest rates and the consumer sentiment and there's just no end of shit you can collect to put into the system.
One of the things suggested by this school of thought is that absolute freedom is paralyzing.
Absolute freedom is paralyzing.
They don't say it in so many words, but that's the message, which
I
I,
don't, I'm not following it. You're going to have to explain it.
yeah, it's not intuitive for me because if you're constrained to pick only A and B, and you know what your choices are, you can try to figure out what is a better selection, A or B. You can do tests. You can actually, think about, what correlates with success, what correlates with failure, and at some point, you'll either say, it's completely random, or hey, I found an edge. So I can get like 55%, or I can get 60%, or whatever. You can maybe even get 80% if you really find a good edge. But with an infinitude of choices, there's an infinitude to understand. And that is quite costly for you to run similar experiments on. And that can be paralyzing if that's what one tends to do. Now, if your edge, Jack, for example, has to do with, let's say, a couple of factors. Let's say it's price action. Let's say it's temperature in Newark. And let's say it's, rainfall in Wyoming. and it's number of people that showed up at the homeless shelter last night. And you've really, really, studied this, and nobody else has studied this, and you've figured out that that determines, price action to, let's say, 58% probability. And you work that probability. But once you've determined that, now, if you've done a good study, all that matters is number of events. Because if you go with a good enough number of events, those probability numbers take hold, and then you win. So that is costly to do when there are infinitely many choices. Now, I'm not saying they all make sense, but people will take those combinations and study them. That's, roughly paraphrasing what that message is. But if you're in a locked, padded cell and all you have is a blue button and a red button, you got to figure out what's the highest likelihood that you get the best food possible. Then you've got a very constrained study, and you can study the hell out of that.
Yep, that part's true.
Mm-hmm.
People do massive mathematical studies on what is the contribution or the
Mm-hmm.
information content in this or that
Yep,
signal.
yep, yep.
And you I once read a chapter about the ID4 algorithm in a machine learning book. ID3. And he gave the examples and and he even gave somewhat of the mathematics. So I said, God damn it, this looks really important. So I went to the UC Davis library and spent a whole day there pulling out stuff on um, log probabilities and came home and implemented it in fourth. And I got put in his data and got the same results he did. So I scaled it up. ID3 stood for iterative dichotomizer number three. And what it would build is a decision tree. For example, if you put in a whole bunch of factors on a car, like the color of the doors and the tinted windows and the engine horsepower and so on and so forth, and then the price. Um, it would throw out color and throw out tinted windows and that sort of stuff, and only choose those things that had the most information and gave you a decision tree based on those.
Mm-hmm.
I later used that when a kid called me from Arizona State University and said, I'm a captain in the Air Force and I'm doing a PhD and I'm using your Expert 2 system to teach a course in knowledge engineering. Would you help me do my PhD? And I thought, Jesus Christ. So I did. And what he was going to do was go out on manufacturing floors and ask the managers what seemed to be working best, and he would poll them. And he made a spreadsheet of their responses, what was important. And so I turned that into an ID3 um, decision tree.
Yeah, there's another name for that. It just slips my mind right now. Primary something or other. Primary factors. No, I don't think that's right.
It's not that yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's not
Hmm.
quite the same, but both have the same effect.
Hmm.
It's a different kind of calculation.
Hmm.
Uh, Um, the and that was his PhD.
Hmm.
So then he goes back to the Air Force with his PhD, and they gave him a lab, a materials science lab.
Hmm.
So he was talking to somebody over in the group that does autoclave processing of aerospace components. And he found out that they had an idea that they could really improve autoclave processing. So he hired me to be the guy that would build an expert system that would control the autoclave the way they wanted. And it worked spectacularly. It worked beyond anybody's imagination. And to make the long story short, it ended up that the A-10 Warthogs were saved just in time for Gulf One by my expert system.
Yeah, those warthogs have a legendary history.
Their pilots loved them because they were so bulletproof, but the problem was they weren't bird proof. The An 8 pound bird slamming into the fiberglass leading edge could puncture a hole in the wing and let the gas out, and that would just blow into the engine, and the engine would explode, and pilots would have to punch out. And they didn't like that. So what the Air Force wanted to do was to come up with a new carbon fiber layer inside the fiberglass leading edge that would cause it to bend and warp and throw the bird off, uh, preferably under the plane, not over the plane, because over the plane meant it would
Mhm.
go into the engine. And so they did. But they couldn't figure out how to cure it in their autoclave. They had a very, they had an industrial grade autoclave up at McClellan, which is near Sacramento, and that was where all of the A-10s were maintained.
Yeah,
And,
driven by there many times.
and yeah, and I had to go on the base myself because of this. But so they sent us a small panel for our test autoclave of the new layout, and we cured it, and they blasted an 8 pound recently deceased chicken at it, and it threw it off. And so they were thrilled, and they recertified all of the A-10s just before Gulf One.
So was this not classified, Jack?
Huh?
Was this work not classified?
Yeah, nothing I did was classified. They even got a patent on it.
That's cool because I can't talk about the work that I did that actually had interesting stories post deployment.
Well, that's I don't care, but what we did, we even gave papers on at conferences. We LeClaire and I would go out to conferences and give talks and do shit, and it was all above the board.
Mhm. Yeah, I would argue that today, if you did a similar project, that would get classified pretty
Oh,
quickly.
today is a different day.
Right.
This was the olden days when America was really America, and we could do shit.
Oh, by the today I meant pre-Hegseth. Sorry.
Yeah, but we had this was the time when we had finally come off the Vietnam War and got rid of the old guard that had lied to us, and we were now in a kind of a new age. It was what I call the salad days. And after we finished that project, Leclerc kept hiring me to do more shit. He he got me an SBIR to write a program that would predict quad helices. Now, technically, that one should have been secret, but it was not. Um, uh, the idea of a quad helix is if you spray a quad helix on the side of an airplane, it'll absorb most all of the radar radiation. That was the fact. The thing that the Air Force was truly interested in was a quad helix as a structure for not reflecting radar images. And so I got a hold of the entire protein data bank, and I hired a couple of math majors from Cal State Chico, and we worked out a platform that would analyze those datas, and uh, we gave them a protein sequence, but they didn't give us a wet lab, so we couldn't test it. But a year later, in Science magazine, someone showed a protein sequence that always folded to a quad helix, and it was tested in the wet lab. And there was only one amino acid difference between their sequence and mine.
That's close enough to be testable.
It is close enough to be testable, but uh, Leclerc had moved on to other things and so forth. But Leclerc ended up passing away from the same disease that took down Doug Carmichael. I don't know why some people get that and some people don't. Most people don't.
Get what?
The disease that took down Carmichael, I forgot. It can't, its name just keeps blocking.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the reason I was up till 5:30 or 5:45 this morning was because I just got back from the ER.
What?
Yeah, it wasn't me. Gail came down with something and she asked me to take her to the
Oh
ER.
dear.
It took 7 hours.
Is she okay?
I think so. But yeah, she had to be poked and prodded, for hours.
That's that's interesting.
It was rather sudden.
Well, so right now they're saying that there's this new virus that's causing people to vomit like mad, running wild, and maybe she got that. Who knows?
Don't think so. She wasn't vomiting. but it was rather sudden and it was quite painful.
Oh dear. How old is she?
Old?
Yeah.
She's in her, she's I think 45 or 46 now. Hang on 1 second. Wells Fargo Collections. To accept. Call is now being recorded.
What was that?
I was a debt collector. I owe somebody money.
You owe somebody money and yet you're taking a high-end stock trading class. How does that work?
Uh, There's a good example for what factors you want to correlate.
Well, I think you should go back to bed.
Okay. I might take your recommendation. It's been about a half hour, and you and I have had a number of topics, but no one else has joined. And you're going to join Ward in about 27 minutes anyway.
That's right.
So thanks for the suggestion on the predictors and the eudaimonic pi. I wrote those down. And there's a $5 used version of it, but no audible version of it, surprisingly.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I don't know, but take whatever version you want. I bought them. I was given the Predictor new hardcover, and I bought Eudaimonic Pi as a paperback. Or maybe I bought it as a hardcover. I don't remember. A long time before that, and it was. And the reason I got interested in it is because I knew those guys. I used to go to A-Life conferences, and they were always there. And we had lots and lots of talks. One of them is a guy named Norm Packard, who is a cousin of David Packard.
These all guys who retired early.
Well, they were all at Los Alamos, and
Oh, okay.
Los Alamos had a chaos lab, and I remember spending time at Los Alamos with
Not
them.
only that, they were very close to the Santa Fe Institute.
Well, that's exactly the point. See, I went to the Santa Fe Institute summer school for
Mm,
complex systems, and but I also went to the conferences that were held at Santa Fe at I'm sorry at Los Alamos,
mm.
and uh, met Stuart Kaufman and all kinds of people. Um, that that was in the day when my brain worked. And it was heavy duty. So when the Eudaimonic Pi was published, I said I got to read that, and it was the backstory on the guys that I was now meeting, and then the predictors. Adam Trier just gave me a copy, which blew me away. But
Well, was there a book? I think it was published probably in the 80s or early 90s, but definitely I think more likely the 80s about the Santa Fe Institute and chaos theory. Because I remember reading a book way back then and being fascinated by the work being done at Santa Fe Institute.
well, it is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a little. They get some of the highest end thinkers they can, and then they bring them in, and they sometimes they're on site at SFI. I've been to the facility a couple of times, and they sometimes bring them. They have them as outside professors, that kind of thing. And they, they, you, if you go to SFI and subscribe to their newsletter, um, you'll find a lot of cool stuff in there.
Did I ever mention to you, Jack, that my dad used to teach at Los Alamos Labs?
Oh, that's amazing.
He was on the faculty at University of New Mexico, obviously in the math department.
Yeah,
And then the lab said, "Hey, we like this particular topic. Would you come?" And so for 2 years, they would fly him in a little Cessna, turbo, not a turbo, even just a two prop plane, and fly him, the hour it took to get up to Santa Fe.
right.
And he would teach, I don't remember, one or two courses, and then fly him back, And he did this for not all solid for 2 years, but there was a 2 year stretch where he did this fairly regularly. And he never talked about it, but they brought him back and had him do it for 2 years.
Well, that's amazing. And to think that's the place where the A bomb was built.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then what you do when you're in that area is you go down to, is it called Chaco Canyon or something like that, right below the lab where there's these Indian ruins that are really amazing.
Yeah, there's a place called Bandelier National Forest.
Bandelier, that's it.
Yes. Yeah. Where there are like, these caves in the middle of these, cliffs.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. We visited that a couple times. Yeah. And those neighborhoods there, if you drive through them, they're pretty interesting because those guys, they made good money, and those neighborhoods were pretty nice neighborhoods.
Yep.
Like near White Rock, I think it was one of the areas.
Well, I was there also at a time when some of the Los Alamos people were had gotten into passive solar homes. And so I was hanging out with them a lot.
Since you speak of that, one thing I've been seeing more and more reports of are, factory manufactured tiny homes or capsule houses that ship anywhere in the world
Yep.
for like five to $20,000. And that's a new interesting development.
So there's a thing going on in California where they're making it, since we got a housing crisis, they're making it, some towns have accepted this and some towns have not, that you can have a second home in your backyard. And these tiny houses are exactly what fits that bill.
Yeah, I'm considering it myself, at this a property across the street.
Hmm. It's additional rental income and I mean, there's a setup charge. You're going to have to hook it into
Water, energy, etc. Yes.
septic and all the rest of it, but and it may be that your septic isn't big enough to handle an extra home. You may have to put a second septic in. Who knows?
Mhm.
But I think you've got enough acres for it.
Mhm. Yeah, I've got a perfect spot for it too, if not two.
But the question is, where will your zoning allow it?
Yeah, a lot of people are putting ADUs on their properties, so
That's what
it
these are,
has
ADUs. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I will be considering that. And what's coming out of China, I mean, they've got pretty much everything built in. They say, setup is anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, if you've got everything prepared.
Do you,
And all the appliances are kind of like built in already.
do you ever go to a hotel in Japan?
That was like 1985 or 86
Well,
was the last time I spent a lot of time there.
we went there in 2015 and 2017, and it's like each unit was this big plastic insert that had the shower, the tub, and the bath, and the toilet, and
Hmm.
even the bedstand. Everything was just all molded in one giant thing. They just shove it in the hole and put a door on.
Yeah, I think Japan has a pretty interesting spectrum of options for just about everything.
Yep,
It's not an accident they came up with the smartest toilets, in the world.
I know.
Yeah, I've been doing the research and where to go, and Japan has so many places I want to visit. Just really fascinating.
First time I saw one of those toilets was at Google, and I decided to try it, and I turned it on, and I did something wrong, and it was spraying water all over the floor, and but then when I went to Korea, the hotel had one, and by that time I'd figured out how to use it. And then when we went to Japan, that was all they had.
Well, yep. You've quickly figured out you're supposed to be sitting down when you turn it on.
Well, I was sitting down, but I wasn't placed quite right, and it
Mm.
see, it has what's called a front and a back, and the front is for female, and if you're sitting too far back on the seat and you choose front, it's just gonna.
I bet you got a lot of stories of people doing that.
I'm, it just it blew me away.
For me, the first time I encountered one was in a sushi restaurant just off El Camino Real, somewhere in either Sunnyvale or Santa Clara. It was an upscale, obviously, sushi restaurant. That was the first time I saw one in California. This is decades ago.
Mhm. Well, there are people who are now selling them as an add-on to regular toilets.
Yeah, they cost thousands, and the regular toilet you can buy for like $120.
Yeah,
Yep. Cool. Well, I think then, Jack, shall we then adjourn and I may see if I can fall back asleep.
I'm out of here. Take care.
Thanks, Jack. Good to see you. Talk to you later. Bye bye.